Well, welcome back, everyone. We have the famous Dan Hodges in today from Johnny Appleseed. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, Chris, and what a beautiful morning it is.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some invasive species, right, Dan?
Yeah, so you know what? Invasive species are really tough. Those are plants or animals that are coming from another part of the world, another ecosystem, another environment, and instead of as many plants and animals do, instead of failing to thrive here in our ecosystem and being outcompeted, what they're actually doing is the reverse. They're taking over, so to speak. And so there's a lot of these plants that we've planted, sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose. We put them in our gardens, in our landscapes. Sometimes we planted them for wildlife food. And what's happened is these non-native plants are having a really enormous negative impact on our natural systems. So this could be economic impact. This could be ecological impact. This could be a pest, right? That's just bothersome. But a lot of times these are having really drastic effects right in our own backyards. And I'm standing right in front of them. The reason I bring up these in the springtime here, Chris, is because sometimes they're easy to spot. So this guy right here, this is a pear tree called Calorie pear, sometimes called Bradford pear or Cleveland Heights or Cleveland Select, excuse me. This is a tree that we've planted since the 60s. In neighborhoods all over Eastern North America. This is we've covered our neighborhoods with this tree, and it's escaped now, and this is growing wild here behind me, and it's taking over some parts of our landscape. You can see, from neighborhoods where, they've planted a few of them in construction sites, and then they've spread to areas nearby the local ecosystems. And the problem here isn't that it smells terrible, which it does. The problem isn't that it's got thorns and makes it really difficult to remove, which it also does. The problem here is that as it's out competing and fighting out those native trees that should be growing there, it's not replacing their value. This isn't a one-for-one replacement here, Chris. This isn't, this tree or any other tree. This is a tree that's having a negative impact on our ecosystem. It's not providing the ecosystem services that our native trees might. One example of that that I like is birds. You might like birds, Chris. You probably got a bird feeder in your backyard. If you like birds, you don't like this tree. It provides fruits for birds, but they're not very nutritious. And then in the springtime, when birds are raising their babies, it doesn't provide any caterpillars. Nothing really likes to eat a tree like this. And so because it's from another part of the world. And so what's happening here is you get this blank space. Birds will nest here because they think, oh man, look at that beautiful tree. And then they won't be able to provide for their babies, and we won't be able to have new birds in successive generations. So we've got several different non-native trees on our landscape, with Bradford pear being high up on the list.
Thank you so much for joining us today, teaching us all about all those invasive species, and we can do our part to make sure that they're not so invasive.
Yeah. Think about what you're planting in your yard. Try to avoid those non-native species that could become invasive. Try to plant native species, and you can find trees that are beautiful and bloom, beautifully in your yard. You can find shrubs that are positive players in our ecosystems. Hopefully you can find, native plants that fit into your yard that do a positive thing for the environment rather than a negative. And we can all play our part.
All right. Well, Dan Hodges from Johnny Appleseed, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Don't forget, you got to get outside.
That's right. Well, don't go away because we have more when we return.